They're called traps. There are three, okay? Upper traps, lower traps, and middle traps. The origin. C1 and go all the way down. Check the 12th rib and you stop the rib 12. That's the origin of the traps. The insertion. Upper traps run from here and goes to the clavicle, the lateral clavicle. So there's a lateral clavicle here. And when you go back, I can go. This is the upper traps. This spine here, this consider the spine of the scapula. That's the spine of the scapula. Check, if I go in the chicken wing position, I check the middle border of the scapula. So there where it stops. And from here, I have the middle traps. At the end here, just in that part here, is what? The root of spinal scapula. Now from the root of spinal scapula, going all the way down, we have the lower traps. So if I need to strip the lower traps, I can strip it this direction. Middle traps, this direction. Upper traps, this direction. Cross fibers, cross fibers, cross fibers. Okay? Upper traps, elevation. Lower traps, depression. Middle traps, retraction. These are the three main actions. Upper traps and lower traps also do upward rotation. So the inferior angle of the scapula moves out. They're called upward rotation. So these are the three. Upper traps and lower traps, they are antagonists and synergists to each other because they both do, one does elevation, one depression, and synergists because they both do upward rotation. Middle traps is only retraction, so synergist is going to be rhomboids. Okay, next muscle. You see this bump here? This is the C7, okay? So C7 is here. Superior angle of the scapula is here. The root of spinal scapula is here. So from C7 to the T1 is rhomboid minor when the root of spinal scapula till inferior angle, middle border here, to close to the T5, we have the major. Stripping, this muscle we call the Christmas tree muscle. So this is the stripping of this muscle. This is the cross fibers. Now what this muscle does is retraction, and also because the origin is more superior than insertion, bring this inferior angle in, so it's called downward rotation. And that's all about the rhomboids. Rhomboids, it's underneath the traps. Traps are more superficial. Rhomboids are underneath. Now, we say the rhomboids and the middle traps are synergies to each other because of the retraction. Another muscle. From the transverse process of C1 till C4, from here to there, going to this superior angle of the scapula, it's another muscle they call the levator scapula. Stripping of the levator scapula is in this direction, and cross fibers is this direction. It's another middle muscle. When you contract the levator scapula, we elevate the scapula. Okay, so elevate the scapula. There's the main action of the levator scapula. Middle muscle synergist to levator scapula is upper traps. Upper traps do elevation. Levator scapula does elevation. To stretch it, it's going to be depression. Now, how can we stretch the upper traps? Hold it, and use depression. You stretch the upper traps. Middle traps, I go where the root of spinal scapula is, go to the inferior angle, another hand here, up, and we're stretching the lower traps. For the rhomboids and the middle traps, it's going to be hard to stretch it to the client, but what you do to the client, you can turn the client supine position, and you can make just hug the client, just that way you just kind of do the protraction, so you just bring the elbows towards, and you do the protraction. Levator scapula is the same thing with the traps. The only difference with levator scapula is that you don't hold the shoulder. In levator scapula, you need to hold the superior angle. So you go to the superior angle of the scapula and the head, and that's how you stretch the levator scapula. Thus, we conclude the muscle number 3, and we're moving on to the muscle number 4, which is the QL or quadratus lumbarum. Origin, iliac crest. Now be careful, guys. You will see like the iliac crest on the males and females is different. In the males it's more higher, in the females it's more lower and wider. Okay, because of the baby and all the stuff, the support they have from the pelvic. Now from here, iliac crest is the origin. Insertion is L1, L2, L5. Stops here. Why? Because T12 is the end of the rhomboids, on the traps. Here we have the QL and rib 12. So origin iliac crest, insertion L1, L4, transverse process, and rib 12. How we stripping? This is the way that we strip this muscle. Cross fibers is the other side. How can we stretch this muscle? This muscle does what? Lateral rotation, flexion. So normally I can hold it on the iliac crest. I hold it at rib 12 and hand cross stretching, and I can stretch the QL. So, or if the client needs a straight up, you tell the client just do the lateral flexion. When you flex one QL, you are stretching the other QL. If you keep the fix your rib 12, fix your rib 12 and the L1, L4, also QL can help you to what? To lift raise the hip. Okay? And then we're just finishing on the QL. Next muscle. We're going to go to the rotator cuff. Okay? Rotator cuffs. Would you say was the rotator cuff? Because they just grab the head of the humerus like cup in all 3 directions. The first one is supraspinatus. Why don't check the scapula first? If I can bring the hand in that, again, this is the inferior angle, that's the superior angle. This part here is the spine. If this is the spine of the scapula and this is the superior angle, so from here till there, going here in this direction to the greater tubercular, we have the supraspinatus. Stripping of the supraspinatus and the cross fibers. From here till there, here is the spine, okay? We're relaxing a little bit. Here is the infraspinatus. Cross fiber this way. Now, this is the inferior angle of the scapula, okay? This is the inferior angle of the scapula. Not from here, just 2/3. From this aspect here, going in the same direction, is teres minor. These are the 3 out of 4 rotator cuffs that all 3 of them share what? The same insertion, which is the greater tubercular. Origin, supraspinatus fossa, infraspinatus fossa, 2/3 of the axillary border of the scapula. Supraspinatus does abduction 0 till 15. Infraspinatus does extension and lateral rotation. Teres minor the same way too. Now, who left out of those 3 is the subscapularis. Subscapularis is hard, guys, because subscapularis is, relax, it's underneath. Now I'm in subscapularis. It's underneath the scapula and in front of the ribs. So you need to go in, and if I go in this direction, which is this direction, I'm stripping the subscapularis. This way I'm stripping. Going in and out, I'm cross fiber the subscapularis. Now, the subscapularis goes from subscapularis fossa underneath and stop to the lesser tubercle. So by going underneath and stop the less tubercle, the subscapularis is going to help do adduction, number one, and also internal rotation. And this is the action of the subscapularis. Now, if you have a person with a rotator cuff problem that you want to stretch all four of them, supraspinatus does stabilize the head of the humerus there and also does ABD 1 till 15. To stretch it, ADD 0 till minus 15. This way I'm stretching the supraspinatus. Bring the arm 90 degrees. By teres minor and infraspinatus does external rotation, just like this. The best way to stretch it, internal. Here I'm stretching both of them. When the subscapularis does internal rotation, so the best way to stretch the subscapularis to do what? External rotation. That's why we just assess and stretch all the four rotator cuffs. One more muscle that we didn't go here is just below the teres minor from the inferior angle and axillary border, going underneath and underneath to the bicipital groove, which is this part here. Bicipital groove, we have the teres major. Teres major does extension, adduction, and medial rotation. The same action that teres major does here, we have another big, huge muscle, broad muscle, superficial muscle. They start from iliac crest, thoracolumbar aponeurosis, lower 6 thorax vertebrae, inferior angle of the scapula. This is the origin. And from here goes this direction. And the same thing like teres major, runs on the front and stuck to the same insertion, which is the bicipital groove, and does the same action, which is adduction, extension, and medial rotation. Now, the best way to stretch both of them, because both have the same insertion and both have the same action, to stretch is going to be flexion, abduction, and external rotation. Here is the best way to stretch both lats and teres major. That's the way of stretching. Good. If I know we have deltoid need to go through and the coracobrachialis to go through. Can you see the deltoid and the coracobrachialis in the posterior aspect? No. The best way is to do it. Why don't work on the deltoid, and we're going to put the client on the sideline. So can you just stand up please, and go, stay on the side? You can put your head on this one. Go a little more down, a little more down. Very good. Very good. Okay. Deltoid. You see this point here? You can see that directly. It's deltoid tuberosity. Now, who comes from the clavicle here? Upper traps, okay? When the upper traps stops in the clavicle, here, in the lateral clavicle, the anterior deltoid comes. This is the anterior deltoid. Acromion process here. Medial deltoid. Spine of the scapula here. You see the spine of the scapula? Posterior deltoid. Stripping anterior deltoid goes this direction. Stripping medial deltoid is going to go this direction. Stripping posterior deltoid is going to go in this direction. Cross fibers for all three of them. Now, if we contracting anterior deltoid, what are we doing with the posterior deltoid? We are stretching the posterior deltoid. What does the anterior deltoid